Hi everyone, here's what's bothering me today. There is a harrowing story of a slave in the late 1700s in Canada whose story would ultimately come to lead to the gradual phasing out of slavery in Canada. But it's not really talked about in Canadian society, and that's what's bothering me today. So the slave in question is a black woman named Chloe Cooley, and not much is known about her. Even in her own story, she's very much this kind of ethereal figure. We don't really know her age. We just know that on a certain day in 1793, the following events happened. Now, Chloe was a black woman enslaved by a man named Adam Vrooman. On the 14th of March, 1793, Vrooman violently bound her in a boat and transported her across the Niagara River to be sold in New York State. She resisted fiercely. Peter Martin, a black loyalist, witnessed her struggles and screams and reported the incident to Lieutenant Governor John Graves Simcoe. At the time, rumors of abolition and freedom abounded in the colony of Upper Canada, hence the desire to sell her in New York in case the rumors proved to be true. So, yeah, at the time, there were rumblings throughout the British Empire and its white settler colonies that the movement for the abolition of slavery was growing. And that this meant that, all of a sudden I'm going to be at a loss of investment and I'd better, get money while money is still worth something. And so Chloe Cooley was definitely not the only black slave trafficked across the Niagara River, but hers is the story that came to light because it was reported by the black loyalist Peter. Now, again, at this time, the abolitionist movement was gaining ground in the British Empire and also in Upper Canada. John Graves Simcoe, not many people know about him, except that maybe they could assume that Lake Simcoe in southern Ontario is named after him. But he's very much an important early figure in Ontarian history. But he's not really well known, but he's kind of the guy who begins to get rid of slavery in Upper Canada and then sort of propels that movement forward for the rest of British North America incidentally. So with that in mind, the status of slaves in the British Empire at this point in time, they had basically no real recognition under British law. They had no real rights. And so this incident spurred some people to have a second look at that. The violent bounding of her and, trying to, man, Vrooman, he also enlisted the help of someone else to, try and restrain this woman who was clearly very much against what was happening, understandably. And, upon hearing these events from the Black Loyalist, Simcoe was prompted to introduce legislation that basically would abolish slavery in Upper Canada, which is what we called Ontario at the time, but it would do it incrementally and in stages. So, for example, this act was the Act to Limit Slavery. Notice it doesn't say the Act to Abolish or Eliminate Slavery. It's just to, limit it. Let's do things in a slow, gradual process. That's nice and fine, right? So here was the compromise. No slaves were freed outright, but the act did prohibit the importing of slaves. So right here, the act states that enslaved persons who were in the province at the time of its enactment would remain the property of their masters or mistresses for life unless freed by their owners. Children born to enslaved women after 1793 would be freed when they reached 25 years of age. Children born to this cohort were free at birth. Slaveholders were required by law to provide food and clothing to the young children they enslaved. In addition, the act required that former slaveholders provide security for recently freed slaves by ensuring that they were held in trust by a local church or town warden so as not to become a public charge. This measure encouraged slaveholders to employ their former slaves as indentured servants. The maximum term for an indenture contract was 9 years and could be renewed. Structured as it was, the act set the course for the abolition of slavery after 1 generation. So here's the thing. All this was prompted by Chloe Cooley, who's the woman I wanted to talk about today. But there's not much about her that I can actually talk about, because after this incident, she basically disappears from the records. We don't know, about her early life or where she disappeared after this eventful day in March of 1793. She becomes a historical ghost. Most likely she probably was sold in, across the river in Niagara, in Buffalo or something like that. And who knows where she ended up after that. And again, it's important, this is one of those really bittersweet things where, okay, great, this helped prompt the abolition of slavery, but it was gradual and still came with so many strings attached. It didn't really free anyone. It was just, okay, look, we're going to phase this out because, man, that just, hurt, that pulled at my heartstrings. And it's just really gross. It's an objectively good thing, but it could have been done so much better. And it should have been done better, but it wasn't. And this is now a part of our legacy. This slave who violently reacted in the presence of a black loyalist ultimately led to the abolition of slavery in Upper Canada. This is an objectively good thing. But the fact that we don't know about what happened to her afterwards and what happened to, perhaps her offspring, what legacy she left behind, the other thousands of black slaves in Canada who did not live to see freedom, but lived to hear that it would come. It's a very unsettling feeling, and it's something that more Canadians should be familiar with. And the fact that we aren't is definitely what's bothering me today.